Hi, Cynthia. Oh, I think you're mute. There we go. Okay, cool. Hello. Oh no, you're muted again. Let me see the participants.
There we go. How's that?
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So let me make you guys go.
Yeah. Sometimes my headphones mute from this. I think the cats push it maybe. And so I'm muted, but I don't know I'm muted. Which they have had lunch and hopefully they're not going to go insane. Look how pretty their shelves are. I love those built-ins.
Thank you. I'm up in Auburn.
Yeah. Are they painted a different color in the back?
They are.
I love that.
Yeah. My mom was so cute. She did that.
Hi, everyone. We'll be getting started in a minute. I'm just letting some people into the meeting and we'll be starting soon. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to NoCal's Lunch and Learn. I will hand over the mic to our speakers from Littler Mendelsohn Law Firm, Cynthia L. Brown and Christine L. Sellers Sullivan, after a few housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded and will be made available to members after. If you don't want to be recorded, remember to turn off your video cameras. Also, we ask that everyone follows NoCal's code of conduct, which I will link in the chat. And we encourage questions and have allowed time for that. So please put them in the chat or chime in at the end. There'll be some time at the end. So we encourage questions, and thanks for coming. And I'll turn it over to our speakers.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Brown, and I have been at Littler for almost 15 years. And I used to be in the San Francisco area, so I think I see some familiar names. So hello. And I'm excited to be here today to tell you our little story. I know everyone has their own COVID story, but we had a lot of wildness and a success as well. So we learned a lot of lessons, and I think those were some great things and some things to share with you. And I'll let Christine introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Seller-Sullivan. I've been a law librarian for about 14 years. I've been at a couple firms based in South Carolina and at the Library of Congress, which explains, it'll explain my part of the presentation since I have a legislative background. So I've been at Littler for about a year and a half and have been in California for slightly less. So I'm excited to be part of NoCal and doing this presentation. So I guess we're going to get started now.
Here we go. I'm going to tell you a story. So back on December 29th, one of our health and safety SMEs, or subject matter experts, received a question about this illness, an employee who was ill. They happened to be in China, and what to do with them. I think we all heard a little bit about this, coronavirus in those early days and what was happening. And we would occasionally get a question, do we have an SME? And we would send them on to our folks over in Walnut Creek. There were 2 shareholders there. December 31st, of course, is when that was announced to the world. And we had a cluster of patients. Then we started getting a few more questions. But then, let's see what's the next one, Christine. By the end of February, we really were all of a sudden getting inundated, and people said, wait a minute, who's answering these questions? And we had a shareholder who sent out an email to every shareholder in the firm asking who's the SME. And just moments later, he received the answer, and so he thought he'd be so helpful and tell everyone the names of those 2 shareholders in Walnut Creek who could answer all of their questions. And so my boss saw that come through, and he reached out to Alka and Melissa and said, hey, I'm guessing you could use a little help. And by then they were already very overwhelmed, and she was so thrilled to hear from us. And so that same evening, I got a call from my boss, and he said, all right, we've got to get this stuff together. We've got to figure out what are the issues at hand. And, we quickly learned that this was not just a health and safety issue. And I should say, I'm sorry, I just said I'm from Littler. In case you aren't familiar with Littler, we only do labor and employment. So we focus on labor and employment issues, and very specialized, clearly. And that's why we had health and safety experts who just did health and safety and labor and employment. But back to the pandemic, it became really clear really quickly that this wasn't just a health and safety issue. There were leave questions, there were warn questions, it ran the gamut. I mean, everything you see on the screen, we received a question on these topics. And really, we had no idea what to do. That sounded like we were clueless. But it was and they were such novel questions, especially when we'll get further into the story as things started shutting down. We just hadn't seen anything like this, and our shareholders were scrambling, trying to get a hold of anyone who could be considered an SME. Let's go to the next.
I guess it's good that we don't have a ton of experts on pandemic law.
Right. And when we were gathering together what we already had, we said, well, there's been illnesses before. Let's see what happened with SARS, what happened with bird flu, and we went back and looked through those resources, and we could reuse some of them, but there were so many new and novel questions.
And I
Sorry,
guess
Mike.
I should say, like, Cynthia is the director of the library, and I am a research attorney under her, and I primarily track legislation on the federal, state, and local level, legislation, regulations, executive guidance, everything associated with employment law. So as background, sorry, I should have included that in my bio, but I forgot.
Okay, we'll just keep going back to the bio and filling you in. So here's some samples of the kinds of questions we were getting. But at the very beginning it was, there's a sick worker, what do we do? But then it quickly moved into, well, wait a minute, they're talking about essential workers. Who's an essential worker? Who's an essential business? Where's that definition? And school closings, does that entitle you to leave? What leave? Is FMLA, does that cover FMLA? And I'm not going to read the whole slide to you, but you can see there's so many different questions. We had a lot of questions early on about, well, if we feel like an employee is at high risk, should we tell them they have to go home? Many employees that were over 40, which is the age that you're protected under federal law, were considered high risk. Could you tell an employee they had to leave because you were worried about their safety? Or was that age discrimination because you're saying everyone over 60 has to leave? So just such a wide variety of questions. And how do you clean, and how do you make it safe? And how do you pay people that you have to send home? And do you pay people that you have to send home? And the furlough questions. And they just kept rolling in. See how this is there. By mid-March, we, as you all know, in the Bay Area, California started shutting down. Those were the first shutdown orders that came through. And they came fast and furious. We got news of them kind of late afternoon, and they went into effect in the morning. I literally was on a phone call with one of our shareholders, and she was trying to pack her office to go home for 2 weeks and work from home. And so the Bay Area ordered their first shutdowns, California followed, and then quickly thereafter, we started to see a flood of laws come through. Now, as Christine said, we track legislative developments at Littler because anytime the law changes that has to do with employment, we want to be able to tell our clients. So Christine, tell them what you've been doing.
So this is sort of a timeline, and this only goes until August, maybe September. So this doesn't even include, October, November. I will say it was especially crazy in March, April, and May, but this shows sort of some of the this doesn't have everything on it, but it shows some of what we tracked, which include federal, state, and local levels, bills and guidance, travel restrictions, state bans and restrictions, face mask and covering laws or guidance, employer health screening requirements, and reopening orders and state plans. So we had a lot of tracking going on of everything that was happening because we needed to be able to tell our clients about it and sort of keep track of what is happening in various areas of the country.
And we just were talking about this in a meeting, I think 2 days ago, and we said, oh, can we slow down? Like, are these almost done? And then, nope, a whole bunch started happening again. So we're going to talk about those news flashes that we're doing, but the laws keep changing, and new orders are coming out daily, all day long. So how did we do this? How were we successful in advising our clients? And, I would have friends ask me, oh, did you guys shut down? Are you able to work from home? Are you just at home bored? I said, I wouldn't say bored, no. It was the most I'd ever worked. I think it was the longest hours I've had since I was in law school and studying. And I would tell people, just imagine pretty much every employer in the country has to figure out what to do with their business and how to treat their employees. And they're asking their lawyer about it. And so that's what That's what we did. So how did we make that happen? Well, one thing is we already had a very significant infrastructure in place. So this tells you about our department. The library at Littler is located within knowledge management. And so we already have 21 KM attorneys. That includes our research attorneys as well, like Christine. And our library team is about 25 with the knowledge desk staff. And then we have a video production team, which is quite unique. That's part of what we call the Littler Learning Group. And then we also utilize some Littler on-demand attorneys. So as you can see there, we had 50 plus people ready to work on this, which was good because we needed every last one of them. And then we also had I think the next slide is about tools. Yeah, the resources we already had. So as Christine said, we have a project to track legislation. We already have a database of 50 state surveys or multi-jurisdictional surveys. We can't decide how to count all the, after you get to 50 states, it's confusing, right? Do you count DC? Then do you count Guam? Do you count Puerto Rico? We can't decide because we're a bunch of lawyers and librarians. We have to look at all the details. But we had that tool available to us. We already had a way to publish quickly news information as it came out. There was one new tool that we purchased, Visual Ping. It was a very small purchase because it's really inexpensive, but it's really good at website crawling. The changes in the law that were coming out were often happening at the executive level, and they were hard. It was hard to find them because we weren't just looking for, governors or the president. We were looking for mayors and city councils and what had they done.
And every state was sort of doing it differently. So some states, there would be unemployment stuff that was coming through as regulations. And in some states, it would be executive orders. And so you sort of had to figure out how is this, in the beginning, it was just a lot of time to just try and find stuff and figure out where are states putting this information? How are states disseminating this information?
Yep, excellent point. And I don't want anyone to listen to this part of the presentation and say, well, this is really interesting, but I can't do this in my organization because I don't have 50 people or I don't have, this infrastructure. This is to give you an idea of what a very mature knowledge management department looks like, but that doesn't mean you can't start your own. The work that we do at Littler, the knowledge management experience that we have there, it started with one person. It was 20 years ago, and it's obviously grown exponentially, but everybody, you have to start somewhere. Let's see what's next. So this is the fun part. I'll tell you exactly what we did in the library. One of the tools that we utilized was ServiceNow. That's our ticketing system for knowledge desk requests. And my part of the story, when I was reading you the string of emails that the shareholders were discussing, after my boss called me that evening and said, we've got to get everybody together and figure out resources we already have and how to utilize those. The next call I got, I was getting off a plane. I was still traveling. I was getting off a plane and a shareholder called me and said, Cynthia, I hear you're going to help us. My biggest problem is I have floods of emails. I mean, literally, we use those tools all the time. Like I'm underwater, I'm drowning. He said, I've never had this many emails in my inbox before. I don't know what to do. And the whole group is this way. And we can't keep it organized because every time we want to ask each other a question, we keep emailing each other and they keep coming. And the questions from the clients are getting lost. And we don't know how to handle multiple requests at once. And I said, well, no problem. We know how to do that. So this was perfectly suited for the library. And that's one of the points of this whole story that we tell. If you think about a new emerging area of the law with novel questions, these aren't really things that the library usually helps with, right? They aren't things you can go research. You need an attorney to give advice on what to do. But because of the intensity of the situation, the vast number of questions, the speed at which the law was changing, Our skills as librarians came into play. They needed someone to take a great amount of data and organize it and filter it and keep track of it for them. And that's really what we did. And so I told them, we're going to run all your questions through ServiceNow, and we're going to keep track of each one of them, and we're going to help assign subject matter experts, and we're going to answer the questions that we can. Because really quickly, we were able to start developing a repository of information, and then we can answer some of the questions. So you'll see on our pretty little graph there, the green bars were 2019, and when we were all young, young and stupid and didn't know anything, and the blue bars are 2020. You can see the numbers have started to drop off some, clearly better than March, because that is completely unsustainable. But we basically handled an additional 2 months of tickets. I said, instead of having a 12-month year, we've had a 14-month year. And those months were March and April. We just lived them twice. So we've had over 7,000 COVID-related tickets this year. And we'll have a total of 38, possibly 39,000 tickets this year. And that's a huge growth from last year. Last year we did about 32,000. So we have been busy.
Yeah, because it's not more people, it's the same number.
Oh, no more people. There wasn't a second to hire anyone. This all happened overnight. So just as the news that you saw happening, this project exploded overnight. And we would have a meeting every morning and say, all right, here's everything we learned yesterday and how we're changing the whole thing today. We literally would have to change the process day by day. And in fact, I put my foot down and said, we're not changing anything midday anymore. That is too confusing. And I mean, the day that we were able to say, no process changes, do just what you did yesterday, that was beautiful. It was amazing. Yeah, let's look at the next slide. And as I said, once we started getting to answering the questions, we were able to build this repository and then reuse our information, which is what knowledge management, of course, is all about. I joke a lot about plagiarism, which isn't really a funny subject. If you reuse your own information over and over, that isn't truly plagiarism. And that is so much what knowledge management is. And so we were able to, as we said, gather all the information we already had. These are leave questions. Let's get our leave information all in one place. And then as questions were being asked and as we developed new material along the way, we were able to create this page on we call it Littler Hub. That's our internal site. And it's all the resources we have for clients. And we continue to maintain this, update it. It still is updated every day with new information. Of course, now the questions have changed. At the beginning, the questions were all about how do I close my business? What do I do about layoffs? Now we have questions like what do I do to bring employees back? Can I force employees or require employees to take a vaccination? Can I tell my employees they're not allowed to travel over the holidays? So we're continuing to get new and interesting questions, and we continue to build up this repository here, which has been really, really helpful.
So this page is sort of divided in like the top hits are at the top, and then the various aspects of employment law have different sections in the bottom, and so you can, as it goes down the page, and so you click open if you're interested in a particular point of law and look and see what the resources available under that are. So we also sent out, to keep people updated, a Littler newsflash. So, the information and the updates were happening at such a furious rate. It became a matter of how do we let people know what's important. So KM started sending out, it's called the Littler newsflash. In the beginning, it was published 3 times a day, and there was enough material for it to be published 3 times a day. And then it went to 2 a day, and it's just a ton of information. It went to 2 a day in April, and then finally 1 a day in October. But now it's sort of there were a couple days where it got so that it wasn't that long. And now it's getting super long again because of all the restrictions that are happening and all the changes that are happening. Initially, there were just 3 KM attorneys working on it, and now there's 2 KM attorneys, 2 research attorneys working on it and sending it out. And visual ping was sort of integral to this because, there's a lot of sites that we were checking that we weren't necessarily familiar with, and they would just add content every day, and so you couldn't tell what is new here, what have they added, what new executive order came out, what new proclamation or new guidance came out, and visual ping would just send you an email saying, all right, here this has been added to this page. And so it was sort of trying to just take the checking part out of it, like I guess using a machine to understand that knowledge. So here's our little map again. So I should say, we had the tools and the process in place already for tracking legislation. I mean, it kind of blew up when COVID came because not only were we using sort of the subscription service that we have with laws, but I was checking multiple websites to say, like, what are they saying is COVID? And we have a tagging mechanism, how we tag legislation so that we say what topics it's related to. And as soon as the first sort of 5 came through, I thought, I think we need a tag for COVID. Like, we just need to create it so that we have it going forward, so that we know. And we were trying to put COVID in the summary as well, because we didn't know how people were searching for the legislation. So all of our legislation sort of goes into this database that some clients have access to called GPS, and it has the bill and the summary and what part of the legislative process it is in. I mean, I should say a synopsis. A summary gets written for enacted and promulgated regulations. So this shows sort of what I talked about before. Every time that things came along, we sort of created a new survey. In the beginning, it was just sort of like, here are the bills and legislation, like everything that has to do with COVID. And then that got to be a lot. And so there's, a paid sick leave chart, there's requirements for remote depositions, there's school closings, there's mask requirements, there's, as something got to a certain level of volume, we would say this needs to go, this needs to go in its own chart. And so, different people would start monitoring it. And we tried not to, everyone was just overwhelmed with monitoring at that point in time, but you try not to put too much on one person. So everyone would, charts would move from one person to another as if they got too big. And then unemployment, that started being monitored after a certain point in time. And we just keep creating new content based on, because as Cynthia said, the questions have changed, and the laws and the guidance has changed as to, right now, I'd say the biggest things that are coming out are obviously the restrictions, but there's a lot of laws and regulations coming out about businesses having to develop workplace safety plans. And so that's where it's sort of the thing I noticed the most lately. So it's just interesting to see where the trends are and what is the new thing that is going on.
Yeah, it feels like on a daily basis, there's some new question.
Okay.
And I remember when the mask mandate started, but the stores have started to open, and we started getting questions. What do I do to protect my employees? There were people who were angry about wearing masks, and some people who were getting violent about it. And they were worried about, well, if my employee is telling a guest at the store to put the mask on and that guest gets violent, how do we keep our employees safe? And, you just wake up in the morning and think, what new insane thing are we going to have to deal with today?
So we do have, Littler has various publications, and this slide is basically to show the volume compared to the higher one is obviously this year, for this year compared to last year. Or no, I mean 2020, sorry. The colors are ASAPs and then insights. So insights are a little more in depth. ASAPs are like, hey, this just happened. Our clients probably need to know about it. So ASAPs kind of happen. There are more of them because they're shorter. and insights are a deeper delve. So obviously you can see it doubled. All of them doubled. The content that was coming out was just insane. And then Cynthia's going to talk about this litigation tracker. So what's interesting about Littler is like the response to what can we make available that we notice that this is becoming a trend that people might want information on this. And I think you can do that on any level. You don't need a ginormous KM department, but it's the responsiveness that I think is interesting.
Yeah, and the litigation tracker was a combination of questions from clients, but also the idea that, okay, here's kind of a new area of law, and let's watch to see what's happening. And we want to be able to keep our clients informed. And so we developed a search to be able to find any case, an employment case dealing with COVID. And it was interesting how much has to be filtered out. You would think, oh, that's not a hard search, put in coronavirus and COVID, and you're good. You're going to find all the new complaints. But it's interesting how many of them mentioned it, and really the case has nothing to do with COVID. So we developed the search and had to refine that. And then we came up with a team, and we utilized library assistants, librarians, research attorneys, and KM attorneys on this project. It is very time intensive and very manual. And so one of the first things I said was, we're not doing this forever. We have got to figure out how to scale this right away. But clearly it's still very important to us. And with there's a lot of need. If you watch the slide, you'll see it's a little video playing this BI report. Sorry, I should have said Power BI. When I said BI, I was like, wait, it's not a business intelligence report. So we have this whole team working on it, and the search comes back with the complaints. We start with the library assistants. They open up that complaint, they skim through it and make sure that it's COVID related, and then they categorize the industry of the defendant, and they'll categorize the claims as well. They'll take a first stab at that, and then the attorneys will read the document, and the librarians help with this as well, and identify which legal claims are being asked. So we can have a retail client say, all right, we want to know how hard is this hitting the retail industry? How many new lawsuits have there been? And in the retail industry, what types of new lawsuits are there? So then the client can identify, what are the areas where they need to protect themselves and work better on their compliance. And so we're able to tell them most of the issues in retail are dealing with leave, or warn people who were laid off when all the stores were closed, or people who now need leave. We can tell the healthcare industry that they were the first industry to get hit with lawsuits, and almost a huge majority of those lawsuits dealt with health and safety. People who were being told they had to come in and work but didn't have PPE. And so we're able to slice and dice this data and look to see where are cases being filed, which states are busier than others. No surprise, California, New York, Texas, pretty busy with employment cases, and where they're being filed in federal court, state court. And we've been able to start tracking the plaintiffs' attorneys and see, okay, who are the plaintiffs' firms who are going to be churning out these cases, so we can develop a good strategy for defense. And so not only are we keeping our clients informed, our attorneys are using this to see, what cases are out there where we can get new business. And then how can we assist our clients with compliance. And then also we have an organization at Littler that's called WPI, the Workplace Policy Institute. And they work with government. It's really government relations. I always say they're not a lobbyist, but they're awfully close. They represent a lot of trade organizations, and we do a lot of work in Washington, D.C. And a lot of this data that was gathered by the library and heavily curated was provided to various members of the legislature in D.C. to help with some of the early early work that was done on a wide variety of COVID relief bills.
And this is available on our website.
Yeah, this is the from littler.com. We have what we call this is the public facing version, and then we have a much more in-depth version that we use internally or for clients. So you're welcome to look at it. If you have any questions about it or need additional data, please call us. We would be happy. I'm happy to share and happy to answer any questions. And I should say, to give the credit where it is due, our library manager, Allison Reeve Davis, spearheaded this project and really did an amazing job. This is her baby, to be sure. And she continues to refine it. So she loves suggestions if anyone has anything they see. And we would love to share and help anyone who has questions about tracking COVID.
And this is the pretty version, like the underlying data is in SharePoint, and then it makes the pretty version.
Right, exactly. And there is mountains of data, and we continue to look at it every day. So if you saw the chart earlier that showed that we did more than 7,000 COVID questions on top of our regular work, we also brought in projects like this. So all that tracking that Christine showed and all the publications and this type of tracking and report, none of that is reflected in the 7,000 tickets. So yeah, we didn't sleep very much in March and April. This slide looks so boring, but it is like my favorite part of the story. So we started creating toolkits. I should say the attorneys started creating toolkits. They said, okay, the clients are asking the same question. Let's put all the information about leaves in the toolkit, and we'll have it by industry. And so someone can buy like the retail leaves toolkit. It will explain the new law. It will give them the forms. It will tell them checklists. So basically, here's everything you need to do. So there was the health and safety, there was leaves, there was telework, there were all kinds of toolkits. And one of my librarians, that was Amber Hutchins, said, well, we need to keep track of this in ServiceNow, because we're never going to be able to keep this straight. And I should mention about the toolkits. They had this great idea because the law was changing so quickly. When we sold the toolkit, we told the client, if the law changes, we will update this toolkit and send you a new one that's included in the price. So not only do we need to keep track of who did we do this work for, but when the law changed, we needed to be able to go back and say, these are the people, go contact them quickly and give them the update. And so Amber was able to add some fields to ServiceNow where we could further tag requests and keep track of each toolkit that was sold, how much it was sold for, and who we even kept track of billing at the beginning within ServiceNow. And then she could run reports. And so we said, we're selling a lot of these toolkits. And my boss said, is there a way to tell me what we've sold? I said, yeah, Amber built that in. So we ran a report, and we said this wildly publicly, it's not a secret. The first report that we ran showed that we had sold over $1 million in toolkits. And that is when my boss went to IT and to leadership and said, we're going to build an e-commerce site because we have revenue coming in here. And they said, how do you know what the revenue is? And how did you keep track of it? And I said, oh, that was us. We did that for you. So in the end, before it went over to the e-commerce site, we had over $1.5 million. And like I said, I love that part. We didn't write the toolkits. We weren't the attorneys who did that, but really the organization of the library, the way we were able to tag that data, keep track of it, have the reports and have the analytics, that's what drove that revenue. And in a year when we really needed our law firm to have more revenue, I was really proud of my team. So we think we might be the first law firm with an e-commerce site. I think I could be safe to say that we're the first AmLaw 100 with an e-commerce site. And now toolkits are sold through the website, littler.com. And if you can go buy one if you have the need. and they're no longer sold with the updates through the e-commerce site. So that makes it easier for them. They don't have to do the hard work we did. But this was a great win for the firm and really for the library. They just really, their ingenuity, I think, really paid off.
So like I was talking about before, how we notice sort of trends and saying, all right, maybe we need to keep tracking this, or we need to build a chart for this, or we need to build a survey for this. So one of the things that we started realizing was, all of these courts, all this virtual litigation that's starting to happen. And, it's kind of the new abnormal, as the slides said. So we organized this virtual litigation planning team and developed a virtual litigation page that's similar to the COVID page on Littler Hub. And then started creating content for it. So asking attorneys who had done virtual depositions, hey, can you recommend like guidance for people, like give them tips on the best way to do virtual depositions. I did a lot of like creating surveys for here are the court rules that are associated, and I'm following all the executive orders and rules and laws that are coming out with remote notarization and things like that. So it's sort of, it's just really interesting to say, like, what do we anticipate being important? And I think virtual litigation will probably continue to be important after COVID is over. Fingers crossed COVID is eventually over, because, a lot of clients are saying this saves the money. We don't have to pay the attorney to travel. If virtual litigation can be done, like, let's utilize it. So we also started tracking. Cynthia sort of was like, we're getting all these virtual litigation, like court orders related to virtual litigation. So let's start, here they are. I've gotten all these updates, figure out what to do with them. And so, you kind of just look at them and you're like, what do people want to know out of this? And so we sort of built a SharePoint site that then is going to be available. It's now available on this virtual litigation page that has, like, if you're going to a court, like, what are the orders that have had to do with virtual appearances or virtual documents, or does it say we prefer Zoom or prefer Microsoft Teams? So it is contingent on people sending us stuff. We're not sort of going out and seeking stuff, because at some point you're like, this is the level at which I'm capable of operating and absorbing new information. But I'm curious, as it gets publicized, if more and more people are going to start sending us orders, and that they'll go into the site. So, that's how it starts. Sometimes some of these projects start kind of small. You don't know how big they're going to get. Like when I created the COVID-19 legislation tag, like, did I anticipate it? I should have run like how much legislation, but sorry, there's a cat walking across my desk all of a sudden. But yeah, so I think that's what's interesting, is working at a place where you're like, oh, okay, we should pay attention to this. And then you just build something so that you can pay attention to it and you can get those resources to your attorneys that need them. So it sort of tracks, this is a chart showing the virtual events by month. So you can see sort of, they're just becoming more and more and more. And I noticed, like, because I look at a lot of the orders, like a lot of courts have been opening back up and now they're closing back down. Like, with the rise in COVID cases, we're just continuing all jury trials until February or whenever, because hopefully this will end sometime next year. But yeah, it's interesting because it follows the same sort of thing that you see coming across in the news flash, like restrictions were easing and now they're rising again. So you can see broader trends. And so it's just interesting, because you focus on day to day, but you can pay attention in the back of your mind to broader trends that are happening. So this is the library. I'm not in this because this picture is a little bit older, but this is the KM team. It's not just the library team.
And we do need a new picture, and once we can all travel again, we'll get together again. But this is in Kansas City, and we brought the whole group together for a summit a couple of years ago. And so it's kind of nice to see what 50 people look like, and who does all the hard work. And it is such a great environment where we can just symbiotically work together, and we have this this path where the library is finding and gathering and organizing data, and we have our research attorneys and knowledge management attorneys that are applying analysis, and then we have our tools where things are published. We have we have tools like GPS and Policy Smart. Yes, that is the word, where the information can go in to help our clients. And this experience with COVID, we learned that we have the structure, and with that structure, we can take on huge challenges. We were working 7 days a week all through March and most of April. We would turn off. I took the last shift, and I would stop doing questions between 9 and 10 in the evening. And then my team would pick questions up between 6 and 7 in the morning Eastern. So that wasn't very many hours that we weren't doing tickets, and we were working every weekend. And I remember Memorial Day coming around. Oh, that's May. Yeah, we were still working then. Memorial Day came around, and it was a really big deal that we didn't work the weekend. And our co-managing directors went all around the firm and said, everybody needs a break, stop. And so, yeah, there were some wild rides in there, but there's also a great deal of pride. And the firm was very generous with their praise to the library and knowledge management for everything that we did. And so, like we said, there's a great deal of pride and accomplishment. And I go back to the idea that this wasn't an obvious fit for the library. It wasn't obvious that CAM was, the department to go to. But we stepped up and said, we think we can help you, and let us jump in and figure out how to just manage your questions. And from there, it just grew into everything we just told you. And there were so many places for the library to shine. So it was a great honor to work with all of these people that really, really, really helped our clients and made a difference. I get so proud of my team.
So time for questions. So
Thank you, guys. I have a question.
sure.
Prior to working from home, was most of the KM team in the same office?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the library is all in Kansas City. Famously, infamously. Anyway, 5 years ago, we left San Francisco, and I saw a few people that I know on here that know the story too well. And we left San Francisco, and we built a new team in Kansas City. Oddly, I would say this, oddly enough, nobody wanted to move to Kansas City. So we hired a whole new team there, and most of those 50 people are in Kansas City. The knowledge management attorneys are scattered throughout the country. And then we have a couple, Christine, like she said, has been here for about a year and a half, and she is in Sacramento. I've been able to hire a few people outside of Kansas City now. So I would say at least 2/3 of the group were in one office. And of that, half of them had never worked from home. We had never had our non-exempt people work from home before. So on top of everything we were doing, we were figuring out how to work in a remote environment. And those non-exempt staff members had Chromebooks rather than laptops. And that was the challenge as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Like a Christine's moving the cats around.
I'm sorry, there's like 3 cats around my unit right now.
There's one back on the couch too.
Yeah, Griffin's back there, he's being good.
I have another question then. If is there anything you are preparing for, anticipating a wave of more questions, once things may shut down again? Is there anything that you've learned throughout the last few months that you want to try to apply, in the upcoming months?
Yes, I have a call tomorrow with two of the shareholders that helped us set up the Littler on Demand, which we didn't really get into that portion because it didn't have to do with libraries, so we thought you wouldn't be that interested. We don't want to talk about what lawyers do. We want to talk about librarians, right? Anyway, we're meeting again tomorrow to talk about kind of the next wave of our work. We already know that there will be questions about, the vaccine or vaccines, when and if they're available, and who can take them, who's required to take them. We continue to deal with school closures, and I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger issue. Also, we think the new administration is going to make some changes. They've been vocal that there'll be changes, and how will that affect employers? We also know there's going to be another big wave of unemployment and layoffs. Well, I mean, I don't know about whether there'll be layoffs or not. We know that people are unemployment benefits are running out, and whether or not people will be able to apply again. And there's an interesting truth in the labor and employment world. If people are able to go get a new job, they usually don't sue the old boss. If they're able to get, unemployment, they usually don't sue anybody. But once the opportunities and money runs out, then there's more lawsuits. That sounds very cynical. And I don't mean to be also callous about, there's so many things going on right now, and so many people who've been affected financially, and it's devastating. But that's just the reality of what I've lived in labor and employment for the last 15 years. If the economy is good and there's money or there's benefits, then we don't, we aren't as busy. But there may be some tough months ahead, and we think that will make us busier. And so we're keeping a close eye on that, and looking to see what kinds of work that might bring to us.
Thank you. Any other questions out there?
I have a question. Hi. Thank you, by the way. This has been really interesting. And I'm just wondering, because you mentioned how the deluge of work, and I think a lot of us have experienced that this year. How are you helping your staff to kind of not be burned out and kind of have boundaries around their work?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, because as proud as we are of our accomplishments, it's so important to stop. We literally stop working, and to see what you can, help people. For one thing, I've talked to a lot of people. We talk a lot, and I encourage the staff to talk to each other. Let's find out what's going on and how people are. We've encouraged everyone to have as much patience with each other and with our attorneys as we can. We were talking on a call just the other day and said, we just, probably safe assumption to bet, someone's having a bad day, or someone's had a rough, something's going on in their life. We noticed the week of the election, we had more problems and complaints in the library than normal. I don't think that was a coincidence. I think people were just on edge. And so I think the first thing is we've talked about it, and we've acknowledged it and said, look, it is a rough time out. It's a rough world out there right now, and we need to take care of one another. The firm has also, I've been proud of what the firm has done. The firm has been very proactive in trying to provide benefits. As soon as I could get my team off of weekends and nights, I did. Also,
yeah, and the don't work over Labor Day, I mean Memorial Day, that came from the co-managing shareholder. Like, we know how hard you've been working. Take this weekend to, and there has been an understanding of, we know you're all working from home. If you don't have breaks to go chat in the break room with somebody. If you need to go fold laundry, you can go fold laundry. If you need to go take a walk at lunch, take a walk at lunch. There is sort of, and Cynthia's been great about this, like a built-in like this is hard for everyone, you know, like once March and April, we realize like how long this is really going to last. I mean, the volume is not the same as March and April and May. So I think, you know, we've kind of been able to go back to a little bit more not working all the time and thinking about it all the time. But it is still a pandemic, you know, people are more forgetful. You're dealing with the stress. That 6-month wall happened. I definitely hit that 6-month wall, you know, like I'm a homebody. I don't mind sitting at home. And all of a sudden I was like, I am going insane. Like this, I just need to do, I'm not bored, but I need something different because there's not
Yeah.
anything different. And so, you know, the
Yeah.
firm has been really good about understanding that and the benefits. Like there's a giveaway right now for fitness equipment, and that's sort of fun, like a recognition, like you're all stuck at home, like let's do something that recognizes that.
Yeah. The firm the other day for I was really in connection with Thanksgiving. I thought it was so sweet. They sent out this email with a big, you know, big thank you, and everyone's been working hard. And they said, you need to take time to just relax and do nothing. And they gave everybody in the firm a Netflix gift card. I thought that was real. I've never seen them do anything like that. So that was very sweet. We got several extra days off. So those are firm-wide things that I myself have done for the team. First, like I said, I reached out, I've talked to people, we try and talk a lot more, and I use as many different means of communication as I can. We still had our summer event. It was online, it was virtual, so there, you know, it was different, but we tried hard, and we tried to make it a fun day. We also, we just had a meeting with corporate management I was in, and they talked about, you know, we're doing budgets right now, and they said, make sure you're budgeting money for these virtual events. Make sure you've got something for your team. I have gone a few times to my boss and his boss and said, hey, I want to do XYZ for the team. Can I spend the money on it? And they said, without any hesitation, they said, that's important. You've got to make sure you do it. And also we've had people who needed, you know, some accommodations. We had one person just recently, and she's spoken about this publicly, it's not a secret. Her child's teacher at daycare tested positive, and so the whole class was quarantined. And so she had to adjust her schedule. And we've just been as flexible and generous as we can, and we're all helping out. We've had people that had to do virtual school with a kindergartner and a first grader. That is not easy stuff. So, you know, we work with each individual and what can we do to help you, and what's the best answer for you? Because one employee might say, I really want to be able to figure out how to fit in my 40 hours and still work and do this stuff with my kids. So I'm going to need a few hours off during the day and I'll work at night. And I say, great, let's work out what works for you. A different employee might say, I can't do that. My emotional is not going to work. And so I choose sanity over money. And so, you know, we had some employees who said, I need to go part-time for maybe a month. Great, we're going to do that. Whatever accommodation we can do, we do. And then, like I said, we talk. We just have to know what's going on and give as much grace as we can.
And I will say, you know, I'm permanent work from home. And so when there used to be department meetings, everybody was in a room and I would call in, so I couldn't really see anyone. So there have been some benefits. Like I like that all of a sudden everybody is in the same position as I am. So it sort of levels the playing field. And, you know, Sacramento, I used to do the same thing. I used to call in, and now it's everybody's on video and I get to know that office a little bit more. So there are some silver linings to it. I mean, I'm sure not for other people that are used to being in an office working with people, but I don't know. You just kind of have to look for your silver linings sometimes. So that's been nice. But and the firm has been understanding. I mean, for working parents, like they're constantly sending out resources. Like here's this resource, here's this, you know, meditation app, or, you know, like various things like that. Like there has been an understanding that I think has come from the top down. And as Cynthia shown, like she can be understanding the department, but it's nice that there's been understanding throughout the firm. So are there any other questions? Sorry, we spent a long time talking about that.
think that's it. It's about 1 o'clock. Thank you guys so much. That was very interesting, and we appreciate your presentation. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank
Bye,
you. I had a
everyone.
great time. Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys. Good to see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.